And then all of a sudden it goes into its forever home. It's totally
I think we're going to start now.
Ready.
So thank you so much again for being here today. My name is Sarah, and I'm a second-year student at CUNY School of Law and president of the SALDF chapter there. CUNY SALDF is really thrilled to be able to welcome three talented and very active panelists who have had significant impacts in their communities and beyond. I just want to start off by saying that the topic that this panel is going to cover today is extremely important because it is an immediate call to action that almost all of us can answer to. Often we ask that the change that we want to see come from the legislature or through policy, but this is really a movement that I think must be led firstly through example and through leadership. And I think that this is what the three panelists before you today essentially embody. I'd like to welcome Maratos, who has worked in the field of environmental and public policy since 1989. He's currently the communications director at Sustainability Institute at Molloy College. I'd also like to welcome Helfritch, who has been organizing for animals for over a decade in Baltimore, in Washington, and now in New York City and Long Island. And she's currently the director at the Open the Cages Alliance. Finally, I'd like to welcome Sarah Woodcock, who's the founder of the Abolitionist Vegan Society, whose mission is to facilitate an organized grassroots movement of abolitionist veganism around the world that reflects the recognition of the moral personhood of non-human animals.
Hey folks, how's everybody doing today?
Great.
Good.
Excellent. Excellent. I want to thank the Student Animal Legal Defense Fund organizers for this event today. I want to individually thank Andrea, who just walked out, but Andrea Roderick for inviting me here today. Thank you, Sarah, as well, for moderating today's panel. I just want to say I'm very happy to be here and present on this subject today, but I'm particularly excited to be on this panel side by side with these two dynamic women, Robin and Sarah. Share a commitment to the importance of veganism that I very much admire. And I also think that in a movement where 80% of the activists are women, we need to be listening to and hearing from more women. So on a three-person panel, the ratio should be 2 to 1. So it makes sense to me. But anyway, let's kick things off. I want to start with a quote. Leo Tolstoy is credited with saying, "A man can live and be healthy without killing animals for food. Therefore, if he eats meat, he participates in taking animal life merely for the sake of his appetite. And to act so is immoral." Now, intellectually, most of us agree that inflicting unnecessary harm on animals is unjustified, whether the victims are human or not. Yet somehow, most of the same people who subscribe to this belief are they themselves willing to turn a blind eye to that harm when they themselves received some kind of advantage from it, whether the benefits are in the form of food, in the form of possessions, vanity, entertainment, amusement, and so on. Unfortunately, because widespread violence against animals is in the form of consumption, research, and even entertainment, is sanctioned by mainstream society and our legal systems, the majority of people tend to be unwilling to see the brutality for what it is and to step outside the ever-present conditioning that makes those atrocities possible. It's true that more and more people are beginning to speak out against the many, many, many abhorrent abuses that occur within the animal industry, and the movement to improve conditions and regulate exploitation continues to gain popularity, and yet each one of the awful practices that animal advocates advocate passionately against, intensive confinement, forced insemination, separation of mother and child, castration, dehorning, tail docking, debeaking, detowing, live scalding, forced molting, all of these horrific procedures and many, many more only exist because an ever-growing number of human consumers continue to create demand for these products. And while animal consumption may have gone down ever so slightly in the United States, it's actually increasing exponentially around the globe. And we're using more animals now and in more appalling ways than we ever have in recorded history. And even if every one of the aforementioned practices were reformed, the treatment of animals by itself doesn't address the underlying circumstances in which such forms of animal exploitation are considered acceptable. Again, all of the atrocities I mentioned only exist because human consumers continue to persist in creating demand for these products. To an industry that views sentient creatures as economic units, it's inevitable that this sort of exploitation and violence will be inflicted upon them and will be viewed as acceptable. In a system where animals are considered property, even their most significant interests are and can and are trumped by the comparably trivial interest of human profit. And even if all of the practices that I mentioned a few minutes ago were abolished, it would still be immoral and inexcusable to use sentient beings as a resource. In today's world, vegan alternatives are available for virtually every single purpose that we currently use animals. Increasing numbers of people are embracing veganism as the solution to the problems we experience as individuals and a society, from our health to our environmental emergency, to global hunger, to the issue of escalating violence, all of which have us living in some form of fear of the future. And this movement for animal exploitation grows in size and strength. The individuals who refuse to take part in the brutal oppression of innocence that we call the animal industry are setting a powerful example. People all over the world, simply by living vegan, are demonstrating that there is no moral justification for the harm that we inflict on other animals. As you're reading the Paul Farmer slide, Dr. Paul Farmer's quote, I want to say that living vegan is an act of nonviolent defiance. It's a lived refusal to participate in the oppression of the innocent and the vulnerable. It's the rejection of the notion that harming other sentient beings should be considered normal. It represents a paradigm shift towards a position that views violence for pleasure, for amusement, and convenience to be completely and totally unjustifiable. And as far as our other uses of animals goes, leather, wool, silk, down, cosmetics, entertainment, sport, the vast majority of our entertainment, of our experimentation, all of these are clearly unnecessary under any coherent concept of what the word necessary means. And there are vegan alternatives for every single one of them. Every one of us has been conditioned by the propaganda of a highly speciesist society. A worldwide culture that is extremely prejudiced against the interest of those animals who did not have the good fortune to be born on the planet in human form. And yet, every one of us has the power to break free from this indoctrination. Becoming vegan is simply about recognizing and admitting that who we really are. It's the opportunity to become who we would be if no one had ever taught us that it's okay to turn our backs on the needs and rights of our fellow animals. That it's okay to ignore their pain if it results in our pleasure. So let me ask you a question. Is anybody paying attention to the drought situation in California? Show of hands. Okay. It has some in the media focused on the environmental impact of our food choices, and that's probably a good thing. Now, having spent the better part of my adult life in environmental activism, I think it would be careless of me not to touch on this subject. I know many of you may have just sat through the previous session on environmental issues, but we are also about to celebrate the 45th anniversary of Earth Day on Wednesday, so this is timely in a few ways. I can tell you with great certainty that vegan eating has a tremendous impact, benefit on the environment, even though the vast majority of my colleagues in the environmental movement are completely ignorant and don't want to talk about that issue. They don't make it any part of their messaging to members. They don't make it messaging to the general public. But the fact is, I can assure you that eating vegan has a tremendous benefit on the environment. Even the most casual internet search on raising animals for food will turn up a number of compelling and persuasive reasons to eat vegan for environmental reasons. Again, that's potentially a good thing, from climate change to water pollution to ocean life extinction, land use, raising animals for food takes an ever-growing toll on the environment. And I'm reminded quite often when I talk about this issue of the following quote from World Watch Institute. The human appetite for animal flesh is a driving force behind virtually every major category of environmental damage now threatening the human future. Deforestation, erosion, freshwater scarcity, air and water pollution, climate change, biodiversity loss, social injustice, the destabilization of communities, and the spread of disease. You can go on and on about the environmental impact of raising animals for food, but suffice to say, those of us who are seriously concerned about the environment should go vegan and take a strong animal rights position. No other ethical framework has a farther-reaching and more profoundly positive impact on the planet and all life on Earth than choosing to become vegan. And I think on a related impact of our food choices, it should be noted that the bulk of corn, soy, and grain grown in the world is fed to farm animals, while 800 million people on the planet are currently starving to death, including 50 million people right here in the United States who are food insecure. Think about that. 800 million people on the planet right now are literally starving to death. A few years ago, John Ziegler, the UN envoy at the time, the food envoy at the time, called the diversion of wheat and corn to biofuels a human rights crime. That's because in 2007, 100 million metric tons of wheat and corn were grown and diverted to biofuels to power our cars and trucks. But you know what's an even greater human rights crime? That same year, 2007, 756 million tons of corn and wheat were fed to farmed animals, which were in turn fed to people. I'd say that's an even greater human rights crime. So, if it's not already clear, let me just say it. Veganism is not a fringe philosophy. On the contrary, it is the moral baseline for taking the interests of animals seriously. Animals and all life on Earth, for that matter. And it's consistent with the beliefs that all of us probably already hold. Veganism is simply a matter of refraining from participating in unnecessary and harmful use of other sentient beings. As most people are naturally opposed to unnecessary violence, becoming and staying vegan is not a matter of changing anything that we basically believe. It simply requires us to be willing to change the habits that we have developed that prevent us from living according to our own values. Is veganism a sacrifice? I would say not at all. On the contrary, again, it's every single non-vegan choice that we make that sacrifices our own goodness. Once you make the decision to live consistently with your values, the rewards in the form of a healthier body, in the form of a cleaner environment, in the form of a clearer mind and a more peaceful conscience will be both apparent and a continued source of pleasure. But even if veganism did require us to give up some of our favorite foods, or some of the items of clothing that we love, or our cherished habits, does that question really matter? The important thing to realize is that the institution of slavery and the treatment of non-human animals as things to be used, abused, and consumed is inherently and gravely unjust. The changes that veganism requires of us and the rewards that veganism brings are irrelevant to the true moral question, and that is the taste of a particular food or the way you feel in your favorite pair of shoes or your winter coat more important than the life and freedom of another living, feeling being? Full-fledged veganism, first and foremost, is about giving non-human animals equal consideration. Not just the animals that we eat, but the animals that we wear, that we experiment on, and that we otherwise use as well. If you take something away from my presentation today, let it be this. Veganism has never been about diet, it's never been about health, and it's never been about the environment. Being vegan is your everyday statement that things are not right in the world, and that you're one more person who's standing up to be counted in opposition to the exploitation of animals. It's the daily refusal of a system that creates enormous profits at the expense of animals who are just as sentient as the family cat or dog. If you aren't already vegan, then regardless of what you say, that you believe, your actions are saying that you believe that animals are things to be used. There's really no getting around that. Veganism is the only rational response that gets at the heart of animal exploitation. Many people say that they love animals, or that animals matter morally in the world, but they aren't vegan. And that's why vegan education is so important. And although not all of the people that we talk to about veganism will go vegan, many, many will. And we can accomplish a tremendous amount if we collectively and creatively reach out to people that show them that veganism is not some extreme position, but that it's the logical conclusion of what we already believe. My friend Jameson likes to say, and I agree with him, we don't create change by not participating in injustice. We create change by speaking out against it. And that's why simply becoming vegan is just the starting point. The importance of veganism is that once we adopt the ethical framework, the ethical position, we need to educate others. The opportunity to talk about this today is the reason why I wanted to be on the panel when Andrea asked me. And I'd like to add that for vegans, the point of veganism is recognizing the inherent value of animals as beings unto themselves. It needs to be a movement that at its core is concerned about animal rights. And though the environmental implications of exploiting animals and humans for that matter are severe, disturbing, and taking an ever-growing toll on our planet, we must put these concerns within a larger framework of exploitation. One in which all of the externalities of exploitation are understood and recognized, but not in which that they're the central focus of our concern. Let me conclude by saying that we need not be silent about the environmental benefits of veganism or the possible health benefits of veganism, but when we do address these benefits, we must point out that while great, they're very much incidental to the grave moral wrong of breeding and unnecessarily killing the innocent. Damien, I thank you very much.
Everyone.
Hi.
I'm happy to be here. I'm Helfritch from the Open the Cages Alliance, an organization I co-founded in 2009. We work on campaigns that target animal exploitation. Mainly, though, our main focus is vegan education and vegan support programs. So I'm really happy to be speaking on this topic today, and thank you to the organizers and Andrea and Sarah for having me, and thanks for coming out. So I'd like to just show, let's see if I do this right. Aha. I'd like to just see a show of hands how many have companion animals or have had companion animals. Everyone. Like really, everyone. Every single person in here has had. So we know, right? We know that they're like family, right? These are my boys, or our boys, Damien and Leo. And I've had so many in my life. These are my family members now. But we know by watching them, we know by our connection with them that they feel things. They have the capacity to love. They have the capacity for joy. They show their joy. They show their fear. They show their sorrow. They show when they're suffering. And we know that they have emotions that are very similar to us, actually. We know that they feel pain like we do, and as empathetic people, we don't want to see them suffering, and we can't stand the thought of them in pain or being hurt in any way, because we know how it feels to us. So yeah, they were both rescues, as all my animals, my companion animals have been. And I just wanted to bring it back to a long time ago. This is me with the first animal I ever rescued when I was 5. 7 in the picture. That's my friend Jimmy. That's my cat Prince. poor Prince is dressed in a doll shirt. But I was 7. So I've been rescuing animals my whole life. I've always had a deep connection to animals. I found Prince wandering around in a creek by my house in North Carolina when I was 5, and he was starving, obviously, and skinny, and but he showed no fear of me at all. I think he knew that I wasn't going to hurt him. He let me carry him home like a baby, and I came home with him in my arms, and my dad proceeded to tell me, we can't have another cat, we already have one, he's got to go to the pound. And I can't believe my dad would do that now, as the way he is now. He's like the cat man. But back then, more than one cat was too many in our house, so off he went with Prince to the pound. Comes home without him, and I cried my eyes out, and finally he gave in and went back, bailed him out, and had to pay the adoption fee to get him back out. So he learned his lesson, and from then on, he never took another animal I brought home to the pound, and he just let me bring in these animals, and I think he enjoyed their company as well, as I know he does now, because he volunteers his time at the shelter socializing the cats. So, people can change. Anyway, before I change this, I just wanted to say that I rescued animals my whole life. I always considered myself this huge animal lover. I didn't think that there was anybody who loved animals more than I did. I had such a deep connection to them. And one day I was, back in the way back early days of the internet, I was looking around at something, and I clicked on a video, and it was a video of a slaughterhouse. And there were cows being slaughtered, and it still affects me even to this day more, and I've seen so many horrible things in my advocacy over the years, but that one video just brings it back. It was cows, spent dairy cows actually, who were on their way were going through slaughter, bellowing. I could see the fear in their eyes. I just could see that they knew what was happening to them, and they didn't want to die. And from that moment on, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, what am I doing? I had seen cows. I grew up in a rural area of New Jersey where there was, 4-H and 4-H fairs. I had petted cows. I'd see them in the fields. I liked them. I kind of, I knew where steak came from and hamburgers and milk. Of course, at the time, I didn't think that cows had to die for my milk, or my cheese. Learned later that that wasn't true. But I knew that at least the cows had to die for my steaks or my burgers. And it was just an abstract thing to me, until I saw that video, and it was like the reality hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like, the Matrix, where you're taking the blue pill your whole life, and suddenly you take the red pill, and then you're like, wow, look at this horrible world that I've just entered into, And once you know it, you can't unknow it. And then you either make a change or you don't. If you don't make the change, you kind of have to live with yourself, And for me, I made a change. I thought, how can I proclaim to be this great animal lover and be participating in this? And even though I wasn't the one putting the bolt gun to their heads, I was paying for that with my purchases, with my choices. So I changed. I first became vegetarian right away. I didn't know any vegetarians. I became vegetarian. And after doing a lot more research, and finding out the atrocities of the egg and dairy industries, I became vegan. Didn't know any vegans. I just knew I had to do it. I knew that from my research that I could stay alive somehow still, as the myth is that you're going to shrivel up and die if you become vegan. So not true. But I knew that I could stay healthy, and actually I became more healthy after I went vegan. It was like a side bonus. And I knew that I didn't have to participate in that anymore, that I had a choice, and I made it. And that was 16 years ago. And I would say, still to this day, it was the best choice I've ever made, and I think the animals who I no longer exploit, kill, eat, would agree with me. So what is a vegan? I mean, we see all these, celebrities these days. I'm vegan for, I'm doing the vegan diet, the weight loss diet. It's not that. As Demo said, it's not just a diet. It's so much more than that. It's an ethical framework. It's a lifestyle. It encompasses your entire life, all your life choices. So from the Webster's Dictionary, strict vegetarian who consumes no animal food or dairy, also one who abstains from using animal products such as leather. It's more than that. I mean, that's the dictionary definition. Donald Watson, founder of the British Society, Vegan Society, in 1944, veganism is a way of living that seeks to exclude, as far as possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, and any other purpose. So, more accurate. That's the original definition. That's the one that stands today. So, yeah, a vegan is someone who is, in addition to not animals, doesn't consume or wear leather, fur, silk, down, cosmetics and soaps derived from animals or tested on animals. We don't go to see entertainment that includes the exploitation of animals, such as circuses or zoos or aquariums. We choose different things. It's more about what people do choose than what they don't, though, because it's really just a choice to demonstrate respect for all life. Why vegan? So in no particular order, so I would say one is the absolute most important in what it's about. Animals, health, people, planet. Dimo talked a bit about world hunger, the people, and the planet, the environment. Just a show of hands, how many of you recycle? Pretty much everyone. So you're in good company because the 90% of Americans claim to recycle. They believe it's an ethical value. How many people want to be as healthy as they can be? Work out, eat right, drink your smoothies, go to the doctor, yeah. Also in good company, it's no surprise that the majority of us want to be healthy. I mean, why wouldn't we? How many of you believe there ought to be laws protecting animals from abuse? Say, yeah, law students in this symposium, yes, of course. Good company again, the Gallup polls say that people say, the majority of people say that as an ethical matter, there ought to be laws protecting animals from abuse. And I would bet that the majority of you believe that we should alleviate world hunger where we can, right? Obviously. Most Americans agree about protecting the environment, protecting animals from abuse, and doing what we can to alleviate global hunger. Each and every one of these ethical considerations can be accomplished by going vegan. So you see, you don't have to change anything you already believe. It's simply a matter of living your values. The animals. So I'm going to speak about the animals, just the animals today. It's 20 minutes, so I could go on and on and on about other things that, veganism applies to veganism, but today I'm going to talk about the animals of my time. So the basis of veganism is recognizing the personhood of animals. And worldwide, billions of animals, these individual sentient beings, this is Rose and her babies from Poplar Spring, yeah. They're killed for food and other reasons each year, for our palate pleasure. And that doesn't count the animals who are abused and killed for entertainment, clothing, household products, and other things, cosmetics. So the numbers, the death toll, let's talk about the numbers. In all the wars and genocides in our entire recorded human history, approximately 619 million humans were killed. We kill the same number of animals every 5 days. 56 billion land animals are killed globally each year. And I make clear that 56 billion number is land animals because that number does not include marine animals such as fish, shrimp, crabs, lobsters, etc. Also, more than 3,000 animals die every second in slaughterhouses around the world. In America alone, we consume 1 million land animals per hour. This number does not include aquatic animals because their death counts are so vast that they are measured in tons. And I think Sarah's going to go a little bit more into that. So let's meet some of these animals. Pigs, my favorite. I had a companion pot-bellied pig years ago named Jezebel, so I know how amazing pigs are. And it pains me when I see them, when I see, yay, bacon, it just pains me. So this is Franklin, he lives at Poplar Spring. Pigs are, like Franklin, are highly intelligent. They're aware of their own existence. They form deep bonds. They could spend hours playing and rooting in the ground, lying in the sun, exploring their surroundings. They have a keen sense of smell. They like to root with their noses. They can break bricks with them, actually. They take pleasure in doing these things, and like us, they want to continue experiencing and enjoying their lives. Unfortunately, as you finish reading what's on the screen, I just want to add that once her piglets are gone, the sow is impregnated again, and the cycle continues for 3 or 4 years before she's sent to slaughter. These are gestation crates. Pigs live in extremely crowded conditions, and to prevent stress-related cannibalism and tail biting, farmers often chop off the piglets' tails and break off the ends of their teeth without painkillers. Now, could you imagine doing that to a dog or cat? I mean, of course not. Like, we'd be outraged by that thought. But this is standard practice, right? Castrating without painkillers is commonplace, and for identification purposes, the farmers cut out notches of their ears. Piglets are taken away from their mothers at 2 to 3 weeks. When they're about 5 months old, they are slaughtered. 5 months. I mean, we know a dog or a cat at 5 months is a puppy, right? They're babies. A pig's natural lifespan, like a dog or cat, is 15 years. Chickens. This is Louie and Libby. Bonded pair. They are inquisitive and interesting animals who are intelligent, social, and like to spend their days scratching for food, taking dust baths, roosting in trees, and lying in the sun. They enjoy their lives. And unfortunately, these are laying hens in battery cages. This is where the majority of eggs come from. This is how the chickens are housed. Laying hens are crammed together in wire cages where they don't even have enough room to spread their wings. The birds have part of their sensitive beaks seared off so that they won't peck at each other out of frustration. As you can imagine, you get annoyed when you're stuck. Imagine it's like sitting in an airplane seat your entire life, and the person next to you is, pecking at you or whatever. So, after their bodies are exhausted and their production drops, they are shipped to slaughter. They're of no use anymore. They're basically egg machines in the industry. Economic units. Male chicks. Male chicks are useless to the egg industry because they don't lay eggs, and they aren't the same kind of chickens that are used for their meat, so they're useless. They're purposely killed within minutes of their lives, and don't think that raising chickens in a backyard spares these male chicks, because the same chicks come from the same hatcheries as the commercial chicks come from. So there's no getting around this. There's no getting around that male chicks are useless and basically trash to the egg industry. Broiler chickens. So chickens raised for their flesh spend their entire lives in filthy sheds with tens of thousands of birds. They're bred and drugged to grow so large, so quick, that their legs and organs can't keep up, making heart attacks, organ failure, and crippling leg deformities common. As you can see, this poor individual can't even stand up. That's common. They pump them with hormones to grow their breast meat very large, because everybody wants breast meat because we're told that it's healthy for you, right? So this is the breast meat. Chickens naturally live up to 10 years of age, but animals raised for food are often slaughtered at 3 weeks of age. 3 weeks. Caged as well as free-range chickens are slaughtered by 14 weeks of age. Naturally, they live 10 years at least. Turkeys. This is my friend Opal. I love her. Well, she passed away, but she was the sweetest and most friendly turkey I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. But I've met many friendly, wonderful turkeys, but Opal has, I have a soft spot for her. Opal escaped, she escaped a slaughterhouse. She ran for her life, and she was found running along the side of a highway. She was rescued by a nice woman, brought to Poplar Spring Animal Sanctuary, where she was lucky enough to live out her life, in peace and in safety. And you'd think after her ordeal, coming from where she came from and the things that humans did to her, that she would be very fearful of humans, but it was like the opposite case. I mean, she was like a love. She loved people. She would greet the busloads of children who would come for the sanctuary tours. She would follow you around the sanctuary. She would purr when you pet her. She just loved affection from humans. So, you know, we could all learn a lot from an opal. And unfortunately, the reality of what turkeys' lives are on these farms, to keep crowded birds from scratching and pecking each other to death, portions of the bird's snoods, toes, and upper beaks are cut off with hot blades. You can see opal beak is cut off, see? Yeah. Her toes also were cut off. You can see it in the picture. But, yeah. You can see the picture on the right that this young turkey's had his or her beak and toes removed. Yeah. 30 million turkeys raised and killed every year. 45 million turkeys just for Thanksgiving and 22 million at Christmas. Numbers are hard to wrap my head around, knowing turkeys as I have known them, but there they are. It's also important to note that turkeys are usually slaughtered between 12 and 26 weeks of age, whereas their natural lifespan is 10 to 12 years. There's Norman, my friend Norman, also Poplar Spring. He is, this is a while ago. So he is a veal calf who lived. So you never see grown male Holstein cows, bulls, because they are useless to the dairy industry. They come from the dairy industry. They're useless, and I'll go into that in the next slide, but they don't produce milk, obviously, so they're useless to the dairy industry, so they're sold off for veal, so you never see them full grown. So when Norman would stand up, he was well over 6 feet. I mean, he was a gentle giant. I mean, he was just a wonderful, wonderful, cute animal, and he's missed very greatly, but it's rare to see one full grown. So yeah, so just like humans, cows only produce milk if they're pregnant, right? Or if they give birth to a baby. So they are forcibly impregnated over and over again. Female calves born into the dairy industry go on to be exploited for milk like their mothers. But the unwanted males and excess females are either shot at birth or briefly raised for veal before being sent to slaughter. So they all go to slaughter, whether they're milking cows used for dairy, chickens used for eggs. So being a vegetarian, you're still participating in animal death. So don't think just by eating eggs and dairy you're getting around it, because you're not. I mean, unfortunately, these dairy cows, I think, suffer probably the worst. I mean, could you imagine? I'm not a mother of a human child, but my animal companion that I considered my children, and I couldn't imagine somebody ripping them from my arms and taking them off to be sent for slaughter over and over and over again. It's just outrageous what these cows go through for milk. And if you think about milk too, I mean, what is it? It's breast milk from bovine, not our species. We're the only species in the planet that drinks milk after infancy. I mean, could you imagine like somebody offering you like human breast milk to drink? It's disgusting. It's disgusting. Like, of course not. But we're drinking cow milk. Why? From another species. And the milk is from them is designed to grow a calf up gigantic, really fast. Like, what are we drinking? What are we eating? If you really think about it, it's pretty gross. So yeah, dairy cows are often slaughtered about 4 years of age after they stop producing milk as they used to. Sometimes while pregnant, beef cattle between 9 and 14 months, veal calves between birth and 16 weeks of age. The normal lifespan for a cow or bull is 15 to 25 years. Sheep. So it was just Easter, and I couldn't stop hearing and seeing people talk about their Easter lamb that they were looking forward to. Lambs are baby sheep. They're also slaughtered well before, as you can imagine, they're baby sheep, so they're slaughtered as babies. I want to point out also, if you've been paying attention to the ages of these animals when they are slaughtered, you'll note that they're all babies or adolescents when they're killed. And you see a lot of people declaring that they would never eat veal or lamb because I would never eat a baby, it's terrible. But I mean, if you look at the ages when these animals are slaughtered, they're all babies. So if you're using that reasoning to not eat lambs or veal, you should use that reasoning for all of them. Pigs 5 months old, natural lifespan 15 years. Chickens between 3 and 14 weeks, natural lifespan 10 years. Turkeys 12 to 26 weeks, natural lifespan 10 to 12 years. Dairy cows 4 years, beef cattle 9 and 14 months. Veal calves 16 weeks of age, between birth and 16 weeks of age. Natural lifespan 15 to 25 years. Lamb between 6 and 5 months. Natural lifespan of sheep is 15 years. Just wanted to reiterate that. Fish. Fish don't get nearly the attention and sympathy of land animals, and it's simply because they seem so much more different than us. We can relate more to land animals. It's just the way it is. Fish have gills and fins, not fur, skin like ours. They live in the water. They don't make noises that we can hear or recognize. We know scientists have shown that fish absolutely feel pain like other animals. Scientists who study pain are in complete agreement that the fish feel pain response basically identical to the response system that we in mammals and birds. And the differences don't matter. What does it matter? It's, we're all different. We can't swim like a fish. We can't fly like a bird. We can't run like a cheetah or a gazelle. But different doesn't make it okay to exploit and kill others. So consider the fish. And the humane myth. Now I know Sarah's going to talk about this in much more detail. I just wanted to throw this out there because you're seeing this buzzword, the humane, this humane on packaging a lot these days, and it's greenwashing. It's called greenwashing. In addition to animal advocacy, I've worked in advertising design for 20 years, and so I know how the propaganda machine runs, and you're being sold a bill of goods. It's not true. There is no such thing as humane meat, humane eggs, and humane dairy. There just isn't. Humane myth, in other words, a belief that an animal product is labeled humane, free range, or natural. It means that the animals weren't exploited, and nothing could be further from the truth. The animal agriculture industry has a long track record of misleading the public on everything from the health benefits of consuming their products to the living conditions and modes of death of the animals killed to make these products. What they fail to tell us is that raising and killing animals for food unavoidably involves injustice. A life is taken to please our palate. There's no getting around that, and the claims that the industry makes about their products don't address the confinement, social deprivation, mutilation, reproductive manipulation, or the indignity and premature death of the animals being exploited. They want to live the same that we do. Ask yourself this question. Who do you love? Who do you kill? Why? Really, why? What's the difference? It's really only our perception. That's all. All are living, breathing, sentient beings, just like our dogs and cats, who we love at home. All want to live free and without harm. All have their own wants and needs, and universally, the want and need to live. Being vegan is a matter of justice and nonviolence. It's about love, respect, and dignity of all beings. I understand we're all on our own journey in life. We all have our own likes and dislikes, different religions, nationalities. But there's one thing that we all need to have in common, and that's genuine peace and compassion for our fellow earthlings. Remember, I was not raised a vegan. I ate meat, eggs, and dairy for a good beginning portion of my life. So I understand a non-vegan lifestyle, and I understand that it seems like a big, huge step, actually. But believe me, you can do it. Please, trust me on this. I didn't stop eating and otherwise using animals because I didn't like the taste. I loved steak, I loved burgers, I loved all that stuff. But I did it for ethics, I did it for them. And I came to the same realizations about what is happening to animals every single day of every single year. And no matter how hard I thought it was going to be for me to go vegan, I knew that it was much more hard for the animals because I was not. So Donald Watson and his spouse, Dorothy Morgan, for those who may not know, founded the Vegan Society in the UK in the 1940s and coined the term vegan by taking the first 3 and last 2 letters of the word vegetarian to describe, and sticking it together, to describe those making the logical extension from vegetarianism. In doing so, Watson wrote in an early Vegan Society newsletter, we can quite plainly see that our present society is built on the exploitation of animals just as past civilizations were built on the exploitation of slaves. And we believe the spiritual destiny of humanity is such that in time we will view with disgust the idea that we once fed on the products of animals' bodies. To this day, veganism continues to be the only way to resolve the contradiction of loving some and killing others. As I mentioned earlier, Gallup polls indicate that a majority of people believe that animals should not be harmed and killed unnecessarily. But most of those same people behave in ways that otherwise contradict that belief because they continue to consume and otherwise use animals. Being vegan is the only way to align your actions with your ethics. It was definitely the case for me. I realized that there were so many reasons why I should go vegan and not one legitimate reason why I shouldn't. Our choices matter. Taking the lives of sentient beings, harming the environment, and contributing to global hunger cannot be trumped by our desire for convenience, tradition, or the mistaken belief that we must consume animals to be healthy. There is no good reason to love one and kill another. Go vegan, help others to do so as well, and spread the word. It's the right thing to do, and simply put, our world and all its inhabitants depend on it. Thanks.
Hello everyone, I'm Sarah Woodcock. I just want to give everyone the opportunity to stand up and stretch a little bit if you need to. I know it's been a few minutes, and this is an intense topic. Don't be shy. All right, so my name is Sarah Woodcock. I'm the founder of the Abolitionist Vegan Society. Similar to Robin, I was not raised vegan, and I had sort of a turning point in my life where I came across sort of like the Matrix fell, where I realized, how come I didn't see it this way before? So I'm going to cover some of the same information that Demo and Robin covered with a little bit of a different angle, and I guess we can get started. So this is one of my favorite sentences in the world. If you think it's wrong to hurt animals, you already believe in veganism. Is it wrong to hurt animals unnecessarily? Most, if not all people, agree it is. But here's the problem. When we live non-vegan, we are hurting animals unnecessarily. Please let that sink in for a second. When we live non-vegan, we are hurting animals unnecessarily. We're not living according to our own values, nor are we respecting animals' inherent right as sentient beings not to be used as resources. After thousands of years of using animals in many ways, for food, as Demo and Robin touched upon, clothing also, entertainment, we now know that we can live healthy and happy lives without using them. That is really wonderful news because using animals, no matter how we try to get around it, it always results in some level of unnecessary suffering and killing. We kill around 1 to 2.7 trillion animals per year, mostly for food. 1 to 2.7 trillion animals per year. I can definitely not fathom that number. I can't even really fathom a million, actually. So that includes, as Robin mentioned, 56 billion land animals and up to 2.7 trillion fishes and other aquatic species. And as you can imagine, if we remember that these are individual beings, the process of turning them from living, breathing, feeling animals into products is horrifically violent. With 7 billion people on the planet, we can't do it nicely. But does it have to be this way? So to refresh here, what is veganism? The word vegan was coined in 1945 by Donald Watson and his partner Dorothy of the Vegan Society of the UK. It states that veganism is a way of living that seeks to exclude, as far as possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, and any other purpose. So to be clear, so much misinformation we have to counter. Veganism is not a diet. It's not a diet. It's an ethical position against the exploitation of animals, something that probably all of us agree with. So, okay, before I go further, I want to get something out of the way right from the get-go. When I'm advocating veganism on Facebook, other forms of social media, typically not in person, people tend not to say this to my face, but I don't have to look far before someone asks, what about plants? They upload this picture into a Facebook comment and think, checkmate vegans, that the argument for veganism is over. For some reason, people feign confusion about plants. But the confusion tends to be in direct relation to how recently the topic of veganism arose. Confusion about plants does not come up after one's mowed their lawn to justify animal cruelty, nor does it come up to defend when a case of animal cruelty, such as a dog having been abused, has come on the news to justify that animal cruelty. Oh, that dog was being abused? What about plants? They feel pain. Nor does it come up after someone had a house fire. Everyone got out safely, including the plants. No, confusion about plants, strangely, only comes up to deflect serious thought about our moral obligation of veganism. After fielding this what about plants question enough times and realizing people were somewhat serious, I still don't know if they're serious. I never thought that. I never asked that when I was non-vegan. After fielding that question enough times, I created this simple grid. Across the top, we have human, non-human, plant, and pen. We gotta go through this, folks. Along the left side, we have physical form, alive, and sentient. So humans, non-humans, plants, and pens, which represent inanimate objects, they all have a physical form. Humans, non-humans, and plants, they're all alive. Yes, we'll give the non-vegans that. Plants are alive. But only humans and non-humans are sentient. We share that critical characteristic. We can perceive and feel things. We have an independent outlook upon the world. It's us, behind the eyes. A plant, on the other hand, does not have a nervous system. It does not have a brain, a spinal cord, sensory organs, or nerves. Why do we draw the line at sentience? Because if a being is sentient, that means they have interests, their own individual interests that can be violated. An interest in not being harmed, an interest in not being exploited, used, or killed. All of the animals that humans routinely exploit are undoubtedly sentient, including fishes, chickens, turkeys, pigs, cows, and sheep. So it's illogical, anthropocentric, conveniently, and also ableist, to draw the line at some level of intelligence. Not only would that line favor humans, because we would, of course, get to determine how intelligence is measured, it would give us moral permission to exploit actually some humans who we determine to be less intelligent. None of us would seriously consider farming humans who we determine to be less intelligent. We would find this idea morally reprehensible. The only reason we don't find it so for non-humans is due to speciesism and centuries of speciesist indoctrination. So when we talk about drawing the line at intelligence, we're talking about drawing the line to justify exploitation that we want to participate in based on a morally arbitrary characteristic. And doing so in this instance is ultimately anthropocentric and also ableist. The line must be drawn at sentience. This poster says, "I only eat very little meat." And the pig says, "Great, I'm only very little dead." Can we talk about one of the biggest myths that there is? That is that meat is the problem. It's not. Animal use is the problem. Using non-human animals who are sentient beings as resources, that is the core problem. The myth that there is something morally worse about meat than about any other product or use is completely false. There's no moral difference between meat or any other animal product or use. The idea that meat is morally worse probably stems from the idea that it obviously requires the killing of animals to produce. But because animal agriculture and other forms of exploitation are businesses that are in business to make profit, in practice, the meat industry is not the only one that requires killing. So does the dairy industry. So does the egg industry. So does the honey industry. So does the leather industry. So does the wool industry. So does the horse racing industry. So does the vivisection industry. When an animal becomes unprofitable, their time is up. They're killed and their remains are sold for as much as possible. And even if using animals for food, clothing, entertainment, or testing did not require killing, if we found a way to somehow use these animals but not kill them in practice, it would still be wrong to use those sentient beings for what amounts to frivolous reasons, such as taste, pleasure, fashion preferences, or entertainment preferences. So we have this fictitious idea that meat is morally worse than other animal products, and it's a very damaging idea because it causes people that have moral concern for animals to mistakenly think that the solution to do with that moral concern is to reduce their meat consumption, to eat very little meat, to cut back, or to adopt a vegetarian diet if they're really going for it. But when we think clearly about where that idea stems from, that it requires the killing of animals to produce, we plainly see that people who've adopted a vegetarian diet are still contributing to the same killing, as you will learn when I go into more details about the dairy and the egg industry. And then we remember that there's an actual solution out there called veganism that rests on logically drawing the line at sentience and rejecting the use of non-human animals who are sentient, not just the killing. So veganism, not vegetarianism, is the moral minimum for respecting non-human animals. What's wrong with eggs? Robin went into this, which was wonderful. I'm going to build on it a little bit. So putting aside the fact that it's wrong to use a sentient being as a resource, as I mentioned earlier, most people do see eggs as harmless. Chickens are going to lay them anyway, what's the harm? But they do not know that laying hens, which are a different breed from chickens raised and killed exclusively for meat, are bred at hatcheries. 50% of the chicks who hatch out are male, 50% of the chicks who hatch out are female. The male chicks will not lay eggs, and remember, this is a business. They are considered worthless and unprofitable, so they are killed shortly after hatching. They are either ground up alive, gassed, or suffocated in large bags. The female chicks go on to have their reproductive systems exploited for a few years until their bodies give out and they lay fewer eggs, therefore becoming less profitable. They are then trucked to the slaughterhouse where they are killed for meat. So consuming eggs, it does mean supporting morally and financially the killing of the male chicks, the exploitation of the female reproductive system, and the killing of the laying hens or the female chicks, all for an unnecessary product. No one makes it out of the industry alive. So do we see now how meat isn't the problem? Well, what's wrong with dairy though? The cows give milk. Again, putting aside the fact that it's wrong to use a sentient being as a resource. For example, it'd be wrong to use other humans for their eggs or their milk. Most people also see milk as harmless. They don't know that cows must have been pregnant in order to produce milk. They have a gestation period of 9 months, exactly like humans. Dairy cows are forcibly impregnated at dairy farms. Again, 50% of the calves born out of these forced pregnancies are male. 50% of them born are female. The male calves will not produce milk, so they are considered worthless and unprofitable, so they are killed shortly after birth. Sounds pretty familiar to the egg industry and how the males are treated there. In some cases, they're fed an artificial formula for a few months and killed for veal. But why an artificial formula? Well, if the male calves drank their mother's milk, there wouldn't be as much to sell to humans. So what about the female calves? We already talked about the male calves. Well, again, the female calves are fed an artificial formula, and because we need the milk to sell to the humans. But when they're old enough, they are also forcibly impregnated, and the whole sad cycle begins again. So the dairy cows, when we talk about these moms who've had these pregnancies, they're really grieving mothers. They go on to have their reproductive systems exploited for around 4 to 5 years until their bodies give out and they become less productive, therefore becoming less profitable. They are then trucked to the slaughterhouse where they are killed for meat. Some people do refuse to eat veal for moral reasons. They're turned off by the idea that those babies are babies, but that requires drawing an arbitrary line between veal and dairy. Without dairy, there would be no veal. There would be no male calves to get rid of. The veal industry is the dairy industry. So consuming dairy means supporting, both morally and financially, the killing of the male calves, the exploitation of the female reproductive system, the breaking of the mother-baby bond, which those mom cows, they cry. I've heard numerous accounts from numerous different sources of people who live near dairy farms saying that during calving season, when those babies are taken away, those moms cry for several days. And all of this is for an unnecessary product. Similar to the egg industry, no one makes it out alive. So again, we see how meat is not the problem. So while I needed to explain why consuming eggs or dairy still directly supports exploitation and killing, we need to remember that veganism is not even a diet. It is an ethical position against the exploitation of animals. When we get lost in this myth about meat being somehow morally worse than other animal products or uses, and vegetarianism for some reason being the solution, we lose the entire point. A vegetarian diet does not protect non-human animals. It's not an ethical position. It is indeed a diet. Only veganism protects them. In addition to people mistakenly thinking that the way to respect non-human animals is to adopt a vegetarian diet, they also think that the way to respect animals is to buy animal products that they believe, that they've been told are humane, like free-range meat, cage-free eggs, humane certified animal products, or organic animal products. I remember as a non-vegan buying organic and just thinking, somehow it's got to be a little better. Maybe their feed's better. They've got to be treated better if they have that organic label. It's just these little things we tell ourselves to avoid really thinking about the issue. One of the main reasons for this misconception is because one of the trends in animal agriculture today is marketing animal products to be seeming humane and ethical, to placate people's consciences. In fact, one of the first things people will tell me when they find out I'm vegan is that they only buy cage-free eggs, or that they get their eggs from the neighbor down the road who has backyard chickens. The idea is that treatment or the way that the hens are caged or kept is the problem, and that therefore buying cage-free eggs is the solution. But how do cage-free eggs or backyard chickens address the male chicks that are killed at the hatcheries? They don't. And how do cage-free eggs or backyard chickens justify the exploitation of the female reproductive system for a product that humans have no need to consume? They don't. So free-range meat, cage-free eggs, humane certified animal products, organic animal products, these animal products are certainly marketed to seem more humane, but the truth is they still involve, of course, a tremendous amount of suffering and killing. All animal products mean hurting animals unnecessarily. So in essence, seeking out humane animal products which don't even exist is looking for the right way to do the wrong thing. Instead of looking for humane animal products, channel that same care and concern that you have into going vegan. The solution, if you respect sentient beings and their right not to be used as resources, is not to move their exploitation to your backyard. The solution is to go vegan. And I like to bring up this cage-free egg and backyard chicken situation because it really highlights how we've been taught to think about this issue as an issue of treatment. It's how we're treating the animals. We could get lost in that paradigm for literally centuries. We could be trying to fix that situation, all resting upon the idea that somehow we're supposed to or we have to use them. It's a necessity that we do it, therefore we gotta work out all these details that we use them humanely. We look to the law to solve these problems instead of looking to our consciences and taking personal responsibility for our choices. But we need to focus on the real problem. If we really care like we say we do, we need to focus. It's not how we use animals, it's that we use animals that's the problem. If you really care for animals, you have to stop supporting their exploitation and murder. You have to go vegan. Fortunately, as I mentioned earlier, we now know that we can live healthy and happy lives without using animals. It is becoming common knowledge in the medical community that not only are animal products and animal foods not necessary for human health. I was under that myth for several years. I think it prevented me from looking into a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet even. Not only are they not necessary for optimal human health, many studies are now showing that animal products are detrimental to human health. Statements about the sufficiency of a plant-based diet have been made by several public and private sector organizations, including the organizations listed up here on this slide. Some of these organizations even go past the point that a plant-based diet is sufficient for human health needs, and they go on to mention the benefits of a plant-based diet. But all we need to know to go vegan is that it's not necessary to consume these products. The fact that there may be benefits is truly an extra benefit on top. Vegans do get their nutrition exclusively from plants and other non-animal sources like mushrooms, and they do not miss out on flavor, texture, or variety. To the contrary, many vegans comment on how much more flavor, texture, and variety they enjoy after going vegan. So I'm going to breeze through here what the vegan food groups are. We have our grains, such as breads, pastas, so bread's still in, that's a great thing. Wheat, rice, and oats. We get to have legumes. Seemed like sort of a foreign food group to me when I was vegan, but I really enjoy this food category now. Lentils, beans, peas, excellent sources of protein. Tofu and tempeh both fall into this category. I love tempeh. We have our vegetables and our fruits, which can be prepared, of course, several different ways. And we also have the nuts, seeds, and mushrooms. And again, veganism is not a diet. The ethic of rejecting the exploitation of animals extends to clothing as well. So vegans do not wear animal products such as skin, fur and leather, fibers from animals such as angora, cashmere, mohair, silk, and wool, feathers, including down, or jewelry, or any other item that's derived from an animal. But vegans do wear clothing made from a variety of natural and synthetic materials, such as bamboo, which I haven't tried yet, I want to, cotton, hemp, jute, linen, microfiber, nylon, leather, polyester, rayon, satin, and something called suedette. And vegans do not support using animals for entertainment, so we don't attend circuses, we don't go to horse racing or dog racing, marine parks, zoos. So on the surface, using animals for entertainment may seem harmless, but it is not. Animals suffer tremendously in being used for entertainment. And even if they did not suffer tremendously, again, it gets back to the idea that it's still not harmless. Being used for entertainment violates one's inherent right not to be used as a resource. Many people like to imagine idyllic scenarios where animals are used for food, clothing, entertainment, testing, or other purposes, but they're not harmed somehow. But they are not acknowledging the harm inherent in using sentient beings as resources in the first place. Using sentient beings, human or non-human, is inherently violative. For more information on veganism, I have a website to recommend, and if you want more information on how to go vegan, if you go to www.whyveganism.com, it goes over veganism again. It also gives you steps on how to go vegan. It's much easier than you think, and it becomes second nature in very little time. At the end of the day, it comes down to this. In order to live non-vegan, you have to accept that it's okay to subject others to pain for your pleasure. And the day you stop accepting that is the day you go vegan. Thank you.
Okay, my question is, what do you feed your pets? Are your pets vegan? What do you do about it? I'm struggling with that. I don't want to use my money to support this industry. I don't know what to do with my 2 dogs, so I struggle with that.
Our dogs eat vegan dog food. There's actually brands out there, several brands out there of vegan dog food. The ones that our dogs eat is Nature's Recipe Vegetarian. There's also Natural Balance, there's Evolution, V-Dog, there's so many, and Nature's Recipe you can get right at like PetSmart and Petco, and like regular, chain places.
Have you struggled with people criticizing that?
Yeah,
choice?
of course.
I mean, they criticize anyway, but
Dogs are omnivorous, so they do very well on vegan. And actually, if you look further into like the companion animal food industry, their food is so processed. The commercial food is so processed. They use stuff from what's called like a rendering plant, like where they put dead animals from euthanasia and like spent dairy cows and roadkill. They put it into like a big vat and they put it at high temperatures and turn it into like a sludge, and they use that. It's disgusting, but they use that in pet, companion animal foods and other types of things like gelatin. But anyway, so it's they need, because it's been so like over processed, even the commercial like meat foods out there, they need to put back in like the amino acids. They use the same amino acids in those foods that they do in the vegan foods. So it's not like you're getting, unless they're feeding them like some raw meat diet or whatever, it's the same stuff, but except you're, leaving out the animal byproducts.
Yes, I have a couple of questions, and they're connected. I'm either playing devil's advocate, or I'm sitting over here trying to organize the priority of my compassion as compared to my morality. For example, if I contribute two cows to a village through through a compassionate organization that's looking at the welfare of human beings, I become a problem in terms of to myself, in terms of the morality, and I need to be able to draw upon the wisdom that I am totally persuaded is here. and I think where I'm heading is towards some idea of social evolution in this being a process. The tradition of using animals for labor is not only a tradition that we have, these bucolic images of, and frankly, that's how I've gotten to know a lot of the animals that are not companion pets. But that they're also important for the starving world. Where the kind of energy they don't have machines, or they shouldn't be using fossil fuels. So animals for labor. These things, they need to be mentioned. I'm prepared to go vegan, although I can tell you I have tried one other time, and the social problem of not being among all vegans is not unreal. For being invited to a meal or going to a restaurant. These are practical issues that if y'all can lend some help, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I can speak on the social aspect. My organization runs what we call the Vegan Living Program, and it's a program for people like you who maybe have tried before, have been interested in going vegan, but you run into like social situations and stuff. It's a 30-day pledge.
If I am advocating, if I also speak up, I am vegan because of moral reasons, because I have compassion. It's hard to be standing there alone fighting, when I know that there is this process that I only started, I'm only a vegetarian about 6 years. I came to recognition of animals as sentient beings late in life. It's a generational problem, so these
No, I
things
hear
need to be
you,
addressed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the way to, unfortunately, there's so few of us now, but there are becoming more and more, and the only way for it to become not stigmatized is for there to be, is for a wide variety of people to be vegan, to show that, you're not like just a fringe, community, right, that it's like anybody. I mean, look at him. He's like 6'4", he's been vegan 26 years, he plays hockey, he lifts weights. You wouldn't look at him and go, oh, that's a vegan guy, that you typically think of,
As a practical answer to, I'm looking for a billboard club. A group of people that can commit to supporting a billboard with changing messages, for example. As part of the social evolution.
Yeah, media products are great. We need that for sure. Yeah,
Right, then
absolutely. There are groups who do put billboards out there, but yeah, it's definitely needs to be saturated. I agree with you on that.
Can I just answer to your question? I guess you're talking about Heifer International?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, there's a very good group in Washington, D.C. called A Well-Fed World that makes it their mission to protect animals and to feed people. And they have an alternative to Heifer International's sending, animals to other parts of the world to be used.
The website's awfw.org.
I'll take one more question.
One resource that I would recommend for people who have issues like that, who don't know what to say to non-vegans, who don't know how to handle eating in mixed company. One thing I would recommend is a book by Sherry Cole called Do You Mind If I Eat the Cheeseburger? Something like that.
Do you mind if I have the cheeseburger?
She's very smart, very compassionate, and offers very practical ideas and also a coherent analysis of the philosophy behind it and the morals and the values behind it.
The name again?
The author is Sherry Cole, and it's Do You Mind If I...
It's Mind If I Order the Cheeseburger and Other Questions People Ask Vegans.
Yeah.
But Sherry Cole, Mind If I Order the Cheeseburger, you'll
Thanks.
find it. It's available in book form, and you can download it as well as a Kindle.
I know there are other questions, and I'm sorry we're out of time, but I invite you and encourage you all to come and speak to the panelists during the lunch hour to get those questions out. Thank you.
is lunch. So lunch will be served in the tutor room where we started the day. All of the food served will be vegan, so there's no concern about that. Great segue from this panel.